and his Grandmaster opponent cracks under pressure. The guy is only 13 years old when he's playing this game, full of maturity. It looks like one of those Petrosian, Smith-Law games, right? We are following the development of Gukesh, and at the age of 13, he just became a Grandmaster. I will show you two of his very interesting games from 2019 to show what a strategic genius Gukesh has become. This game, it's white to play. It was played against Doshi in 2019 December. Gukesh, when he became a Grandmaster in January 2019, he was the second earliest child who attained the GM title. Later, Mishra became the youngest GM in chess history, but Gukesh was impressively strong at this age. This position, folks, white to play, white, Gukesh with white pieces. How would you treat this position? This segment already shows us his strategic wizardry, so to speak. Okay? To understand Gukesh's next move here, I will first show you a pattern and chunk that you need to know. How would you evaluate this position? Is it white or black who is better, and why? Folks, when you look a bit deeper, you see that the isolated queen's pawn on d5, that's a clear weakness. White has a c-file for their rook, also this d4 blockading square for their knight. That's a dream position for white, and this is a chunk, dream state that Gukesh wants to establish from the initial position. Now we go back to this position. Can you tell me which move he played to reach his dream? And you're a great player if you found Gukesh's move a5. He is destroying this beautiful pawn chain and forcing a concession for black. After b5, you tell me Gukesh's next move. Yes, d takes c5, and he's isolating the pawn on d5, also opening up the c-file. The next move, you tell me, rook c1, occupying the only open file with tempo on the bishop, and after bishop b4 check, you tell me Gukesh's next move. You can do it. Yes, trading off black's good bishop for the bad bishop, also clarifying the situation right now. White is playing against the isolated queen's pawn on d5 with a beautiful blockading position. This was our dream state from the initial position. You see how Grandmaster Gukesh, a 13-year-old child, reaches his strategic dream by playing the move a5 from this position. a5 creates a big concession. If you take on a5, nothing changes. Black is still facing the same issues, okay? So by hitting the pawn on b6, which is lacking support, white is reaching their dream. So let's see how Gukesh converted the positional advantage from this position. The end position of this game, folks, was featured in my channel as well. Please watch until the very end because I will ask you a very tricky blunder-check puzzle, alright? Rook c5, of course, beautifully attacking the target on d5 and forcing knight e7, castles, castles. What's the next move for white? Very simple. The only open file is dominated by the white rooks. It's as simple as that. Again, evaluation please. White is better, much better pieces and a better pawn structure. See how Grandmaster Gukesh is playing the segment. Knight e4, blockading with knight, right? Very natural plan. Also, white gets ready to push the king side pawn majority this way. White is 4 pawns versus 3 on the king side, and they are getting ready for that. Takes, rook c8. Again, very nice question. Do you take on c8 or do you play some other move? Of course, queen c3. He wants to keep on dominating the only open file. He's asking black to take on c5, which is helping the white queen. You see? Beautiful chess. King f8. Well, what's the next move? f4. Gukesh is not shying away from pushing pawns around this king, because this way he's also introducing ideas like f5 to dominate black's kingside completely, but also he's supporting his pawn on e5. He's pushing the kingside pawn majority. King e8 was a mistake. Black should have played the move rook takes c8 and then queen g4. Black is in dire need of some counterplay. This was the only choice for black, in fact. After g3, h5, h4 would come. Black is in dire needs of counterplay, but he misses that, folks. He played king e8 and Gukesh doesn't give him the second chance. He first takes on c8. After he takes on c8, folks, if queen takes c8, then we see the transformation of a knight endgame. Botvinnik says knight endgames are pawn endgames. Everything that holds in a pawn endgame also holds in a knight endgame. Here we see that white's a much better pawn structure, weakness on a6, weakness on d5, and also a much better knight on d4. And you tell me the next move. How do you exploit this target on a6? Yes, knight c6 hints at these two ideas, and black cannot defend both of these pawns, right? Both weaknesses, one of them are dropping basically after knight b4. You see, the knight is hitting the target on a6, and white gets a completely winning advantage. That's exactly why in this position they took back with the knight. But the problem remained for black, and you tell me the next move for white. Black wants to get queen g4 and get some counterplay on the king side. How do you clarify the situation? And you're a great player if you found Gukesh's move, queen c6. The art of exchanging pieces. It's as simple as that. By hitting the target on a6 and d5, you're basically forcing this queen trade, right? You're forcing the queen trade. If they take on c6, then your knight is still jumping to b8 or b4, and you're winning a pawn for nothing, right? And in the actual game, he played the move knight e7 in this position, folks. Well, Gukesh could have taken on d7 directly, but he first checks the king on a8, and after king e7, you stop the video. I posted this position on my YouTube channel. It was about 90% of the people go wrong in this position. Now, first of all, if I told you there's a tactical idea for white, would you spot it? Would you spot that tactical resource, folks? But just because you spotted it doesn't mean that you should play it. Can you blunder check that move, please? And you're a great player. First of all, if you spotted this idea of queen takes a7, knight c6, folks, and white wins a piece with a winning position. What is wrong with that, folks? What is wrong with the move queen takes a7? Yes, if you take on a7, that's a horrendous blunder because you're pinning your knight. Your king is living on g1 and you're missing that, right? Knight c6 is an illegal move right now. The knight doesn't go there. Frustration, cold shower, you lose. That's why good board vision is always important in chess. You should see this alignment on that diagonal. You should see your king is living on g1 on the same diagonal as that knight on d4. Thus, Gukesh doesn't take on a7 but plays the move king f1. Now everything is set for this nice tactic. If the knight moves, then a6 pawn is dropping. Black is in a zugzwang. The queen has to guard the knight. The king has no moves left. The knight sucks on a8, no moves left. And basically the game is completely over. He tried b4, but then Gukesh executes the same idea, right? And won the game like that. Fork takes. Can they go and grab our knight in the corner, folks? Please formulate a winning plan for white. What is the simplest way to win this position? Yes, you're a great player if you looked at your king side pawn majority and came up with the move f5 followed by e6, and they can't defend our pawn promotion. They have no time to capture our knight, and the game is completely finished. Instead of b4, if they play the move knight c8, folks, well, I will take on a6. One more pawn is falling. This pawn is running. You have no time for anything. I can check your king, followed by, if I want to stop queen d1 ideas, I can play knight f3. The queen is tied down in guarding that knight. My pawn is rolling. No counterplay left. White is completely winning this position. Lessons? Very clear. Pawn transformation to reach a desired state, the art of exchanging pieces, giving them a clear target on d5 and blockading ideas, establishing a clearly better middle game position, step-by-step improvement of every single piece, keeping control, and not shying away from piece trade as long as we can attack those long-term targets like a6 and d5, you see? See how he doesn't shy away from piece trades? He's inviting piece trades because he's trusting his endgame skills. He's seeing those long-term targets to be easily exploitable without the queens in this case. You see, his strategic mastery is in great heights in 2019 already. I will show you the second game he played in 2019, another beautiful one. Please watch until the very end because we will see an amazingly beautiful exchange offer by Gukesh. He's playing against a very strong player called Cornette. He was rated 2553, by the way. He's actually above Gukesh's rating when this game was played. But this game also shows us a couple of interesting things. How Gukesh is going for a positional pawn sacrifice, long-term pawn sacrifice to establish a good piece play. Okay, white is Gukesh in this game. He's choosing this Reti setup, let's say, with e3. Now it's actually reverse Benoni structure, folks, right? Benoni structure, the bishop on this long diagonal, and the queen side pawn majority for white, right? Very typical Benoni with the white pieces. He's taking very dynamical, very sharp, of course, and this will be a very sharp battle. First, he's exchanging that knight in this position to solve his space problem a little bit. Now the knight can go to d2 without hindering the bishop, but also, you might say, those light squares are now becoming easy targets without that knight controlling those light squares. All right, that explains this piece exchange by Gukesh. Here comes a beautiful a3. He wants to expand on the queen side, of course, very typical in the Benoni structures. a5 stops that, and then comes knight e4, bishop c7. Please bear with me, folks. He goes c5 here. c5 is very standard in those positions. The idea is twofold. Sometimes this knight can go to c4. He's creating a square for his knight. But sometimes, as we'll see in the game, this long-term pawn sacrifice is becoming an option for white at some point. All right? Castles, knight d2. You see, Gukesh is following a plan. Knight c4 is coming next. Light squares is completely in white's favor here. Also, the bishop on c8 is a bad piece. This bishop is shining over that bishop on c8 so clearly. f5, black needs to chase that knight away from e4, and then comes Gukesh's next move. Beautiful, beautiful positional pawn sacrifice. He doesn't retreat his knight. There is no retreat squares anyways from this position, so he's understood that after f5, he will sacrifice that pawn. Look at this transformation of the structure. He forced f5. What did f5 give to white, folks? In terms of weaknesses, please. This f5 move was not desirable for black. They had to play the move to win a pawn. And now look at the square that are left behind. e5 square has become a weak square, right? No pawn, no black pawn can control e5 for the rest of the game. Plus, e6 pawn has become a backward pawn on a semi-open file. By playing f5, this bishop has become even worse, right? I'm just listing you all the drawbacks of the move f5, and from here you will see how Gukesh exploits those drawbacks. Beautiful. By the way, also by c takes d6, Gukesh activated their rook on the c file. He's opening up the c file for his pieces. If you combine all these things, you see how compensation looks like for white. See how that d4 pawn is limiting that knight. See how difficult for black is to attack the weakness on d3 and so on. And see how that bishop is pressurizing the queen side so much. Knight c4, another beautiful piece on a light square. Rook e1. He's basically immediately taking advantage of the weaknesses as I listed to you, right? Beautiful. And the other rook is also coming to c1 soon. So Gukesh now knows which piece is going where, right? Beautiful coordination for white, by the way. Bishop d7. If you play e5, white can ignore you and play the move rook c1. At any point, white can take that knight, followed by knight takes e5. There is no rush. You can also play like this, by the way, right? But he doesn't want to give these light squares to black that easily. Gukesh says, I can always take your pawn on e5 if you push, but there is no rush. Full pressure. That's exactly why he plays bishop d7 in the actual game. Black is forced to passivity despite having an extra pawn. And see how Gukesh is treating this position, folks. This rook now wants to join the c file, and he plays a flexible rook e2. Sometimes this rook can go to c2, sometimes the queen can go to e1 to put pressure, right? It's a very flexible move with the rook. He's choosing flexibility in this case. Rook e8, another passive move, defending queen e1. One more idea behind rook e1, right? Folks, look at this. He's pressurizing the weakness on e6 in this case. He's also hinting at a potential b4, b5, and so on. The queen also supports that square, as you can see. Queen b8 was chosen. The queen escapes the pressure on the c file, but please look at the black pieces, folks. They're all strangely placed, don't you think? So black's extra pawn is not felt at all in this position, in fact. And Gukesh plays the move f4, creating a bind on this e5 square, folks. Another beautiful move. Now e5s are discouraged, and this pawn is fixed as a target on a semi-open file. This game is so beautiful to watch. So beautiful to watch. Well, b5 was chosen by black player. And here Gukesh goes knight e2. This knight is rerouting to b3 to c5 potentially, maybe to f3 to e5 potentially. This knight is still a great piece in the white camp. And now after b5, this knight on c6 has become a more loose piece on that square, right? a4, he wants to discourage the move knight b3. He also wants to play knight a5 at some point as black. And here Gukesh, instead of going for this pawn on e6, folks, he's choosing a beautiful positional resource. If Gukesh wanted to win the pawn on a6, he could have played the move bishop takes c6. But if you choose that path, first of all, you only regain your pawn, the material is actually equal, and after these exchanges, well, the bishop is becoming a good piece, right? And your knight has no clear targets from its position. It will be a completely equal endgame if you play this way. It's a completely equal pawn endgame. So Gukesh refuses to win the pawn on a6. This pawn is not going anywhere, right? You see, white is full domination still, strategic domination. He doesn't want to just cash in on the pawn. He wants to keep the pressure. This signifies a very strong player, you see. Willingness to sacrifice a pawn for long-term benefits and refusing to grab a marshmallow pawn on e6 and keeping up the pressure. This really shows maturity for Gukesh at the age of 13. Instead, he chose the move b4, folks. b4 is a great move, cementing the c5 outpost and asking a very simple question to black. If you take my pawn, then my knight is coming to c5 in 2 moves. It's as simple as that, right? He wants to activate his knight if black takes on b3. In fact, you can't even take my pawn on a3 because your rook is tied down in guarding that knight. Otherwise, knight c5 is coming, creating all this pressure on the black position, and white is still having a beautiful domination, beautiful pieces. Just look at the harmony in the white camp, folks. That's what I mean by really strong strategic play. So b4 keeps the pressure. He plays queen d6 in this position, folks. But then comes the other route for the knight. This knight can now hint at knight e5 ideas. Another beautiful move. Rook c5s are there. I will double up on the c file at some point. Black pieces are still paralyzed. You can never play e5 in this position. Okay? Rook c8 was chosen. Comes Gukesh's move rook c2. Now everything is becoming crystal clear, right? C-file pressure, this bishop will activate at some point. Ideas such as knight e5 at some point. That knight is sort of becoming pinned on the c-file. Black cannot play e5. They are forced to passivity. In fact, rook a7 is a very passive move, you see. They just want to defend like this. But Gukesh now finds the move knight e5. This was the final point of knight f3. What's the point? If you take my knight, then your rook is dropping with check. And then I will take on e5 with a winning position, which means you cannot take my knight on e5, but then every single piece is becoming beautiful for white. He plays the move rook c7, and this was a fatal mistake. The only move to survive for black was another retreat, knight e7, because this way they are defending the rook on c8, folks. The problem is we don't even need to take on c8. White can pile up the pressure with moves like rook c5 and keep the bind. You see the bind? Just please look at the white pieces again, folks. That's what I mean by harmony, basically. And you see full compensation for white. That extra pawn, there is that extra pawn. The extra pawn is on e6. It's completely meaningless, in fact, that extra pawn for black in this position. You see the positional domination for white? It's a beautiful evaluation exercise, by the way. If you only look at the material count, it looks like black has an extra pawn. But piece activity and coordination is more important than material in chess. This example nicely shows us that, folks. We are coming to an end. Rook c7 was chosen. Gukesh first exchanges that knight on c6, and here please stop the video, folks. Gukesh finds a beautiful move. This move can go to my course, the art of exchanging pieces. Can you please identify that extremely strong exchange offer that was found by Gukesh? Gukesh makes the next move and puts black into zugzwang. First things first, you see this pressure on the bishop on c6, and you see how this pin could be utilized. Right now, this bishop is not pinned because this rook is defended 2 times, you see. But what if we put more pressure in the black's position to make this bishop extremely pinned in 2 moves? And that's how you'll find the move, bam, queen e5. What a beautiful move. a quiet move that finishes off the game basically. This exchange offer is so powerful because if you take my queen, then look at your bishop. Now this bishop has become truly pinned. You see it. White is putting so much pressure on that bishop, and this rook is only guarded once, and you can no longer guard this rook second time. Your defensive queen on d6 disappeared as a result of this trade. That's the first point of this move, queen e5. Beautiful queen centralization, by the way. Yeah. So after takes, the game is over. You can take the bishop, but it's a complete lost endgame for black, right? So you cannot take my queen. But if you go to d7, you see the rook on d7, the rook on c7 is now attacked even more, which means the bishop on c6 is completely paralyzed. Please look at white's coordination. Please look at the white pieces. All of them reached their full potential, and black cannot move a single piece. This rook cannot move because the bishop is dropping, right? No piece can move. So Gukesh makes a very simple move. He goes h4. Many players in this position would blunder. They would choose the move bishop c6, rook c6, and they would say, hey, I will take the pawn and I will win material. And that's exactly how you blunder in chess. Because this way, you're ignoring black's move rook takes c2. Now they're hitting your queen. You must take that piece. But then this rook drops with check, this guy invades, and then after this, no one is stopping the move rook e2 followed by rook takes h2, and you need to sacrifice the queen to be able to survive in this position. You have to give up your queen, but black is of course winning this position with an extra rook. You see, many mortals, when they reach a position like this, they cannot wait. They don't have patience to wait for a single move. They want to cash in on their advantage with moves like this. With lack of calculation, they are blundering their beautiful position to a defeat. So Gukesh, of course, sees that. He plays h4. Well, what's the idea? The idea is just to create a little square for his king to avoid all these rook takes c1 moves that are coming with check. You see, he's avoiding such ideas by tucking his king on h2. Also, black is in Zugzwang. Black has no moves left, so he's enjoying his position. He's like, yeah, let me make a couple of more moves here, right? Because the position is so beautiful, black has no moves left in this position, folks. King f7 was chosen. There's nothing else, basically. If you play king h8, then I can tuck my king on h2. You keep on waiting. Now I can take on c6, followed by queen takes b5. You see, one pin is here. The second pin is on that c6 point. Black is in no position to defend their position. Rook c1, queen takes d7, extra bishop for white with a completely winning position, right? Otherwise, I will take on c6 on the next turn. The game is over. So black couldn't wait. That's why he chose the move king f7. But this move has a drawback, folks. Now, the moment I take your queen on d7, this move will come with check. You see, things are changing. And Gukesh sees that. Please stop the video and find Gukesh's beautiful solution that force resignation. Yes, now we can cash in. We can take that pin bishop because we are winning directly in this position. Queen takes b5. Well, now if you take my rook, the problem is this move is coming with check thanks to king f7, and white is winning with a queen versus rook, of course. And after queen takes b5, no moves left. If you defend your queen like that, I can take with check followed by rook takes c8, and I'm still winning. Otherwise, there's no move left for the rook. Nothing changes after this move, of course. Takes. White has an extra rook with a winning position. So after bishop takes c6, rook c6, queen takes b5, black player resigned here. He has no moves left, folks. Beautiful, beautiful victory for Gukesh. Positional masterpiece. Strategic masterpiece by Gukesh. See how he is sacrificing a pawn for long-term benefits. He doesn't want to grab the pawn directly. He's trusting his strategic skills and piece coordination to put pressure on black with flexible moves like this, queen e1, rook c2 ideas. Yeah, step by step, he's putting pressure on black. He never gives them a chance to play e5. He's freezing the backward pawn on e6 with moves like this. And see how he's rerouting his knight with moves like b4. Also stops moves like knight a5, by the way, right? Freezing the queen side, introducing ideas like this, and his Grandmaster opponent cracks under pressure. The guy is only 13 years old when he's playing this game, full of maturity. It looks like one of those Petrosian Smyslow games, right? You see a strategic grind, and even this, queen e5, the art of exchanging pieces. Every single piece reaches their maximum. In those moments, the opponent position just collapses. Just look at that, right? Again, final position, beautifully attacking the target on c6. The bishop cannot move, full of domination for white. And after queen d7, see how he doesn't blunder with moves like this. With moves like this, folks, where many beginners would fall for this. See how he's introducing one more idea of tucking his king and forcing black into a zugzwang. Black has no moves left, and he cracks under pressure, and he just wins this beautiful game against a grandmaster at the age of 13. In both games, we saw how Gukesh is using exchange as a weapon, how he's paying attention to those long-term targets like this, and how he wins games without giving any counterplay to his opponents. Great strategic maturity at the age of 13, and these are the games that I chose for you for today's episode, and I will keep on doing this series. The guy might become a world champion soon in this year, in November, so we need more careful study on his games and see how a child is improving significantly with every single year. Please check out the entire playlist on YouTube about the development of Gukesh, and to gain more insights about such beautiful piece exchanges, please check out my course, The Art of Exchanging Pieces. It's full of such ideas. There's a chapter about this kind of exchanges. It's about exchanges to utilize long-term targets. That's exactly what's going on with this trade. That long-term weakness on a6 will be easily exploitable without the queens on the board. And Gukesh, of course, shows a true mastery and true understanding of this strategic concept. I love such strategic games, folks, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please give me a like and subscribe if you like this one, and I will catch you on the next episode on development of Gukesh. Bye bye.